When Karen knocked on my door with a $5,000 0 cents fine for illegal hunting, I just smiled. What she didn't know was that little piece of paper would set off a chain of events that would leave the entire HOA in tears. They thought they controlled every inch of this neighborhood, but there's one thing they don't control: property law. And once I started digging into those so-called community trails they hiked every morning, I uncovered a secret that would change everything. If you've ever dreamed of putting a smug HOA in its place, especially when it comes to private property rights, this story is for you. By the way, where are you watching from? Drop a comment. I'd love to see how strong our community really is. I never planned on becoming the neighborhood villain. 2 years ago, when I moved to Green Valley Estates, I was simply looking for peace and quiet. After 8 years in the military and another 5 working in cramped tech offices in Seattle, I was craving space. Lots of it. My name is Mason Holloway. I'm 38 and I work remotely as a software engineer for a cybersecurity firm. The job pays well, offers flexibility, and most importantly, gave me the freedom to leave the city behind and move somewhere quieter. Green Valley Estates, nestled against a stretch of woodland in western Washington, seemed modern homes on large lots, surrounded by forest. Remote enough to be peaceful, but still close enough to stores and services. The HOA fees were high, $450 0 cents per quarter, but the listing agent promised it was worth it for the well-kept common spaces and award-winning landscaping. What she failed to mention was that the Green Valley Estates Association was run by Evelyn Richardson, quite possibly the most controlling 38-year-old to ever wield an HOA rulebook. I first met Evelyn during my second week in the neighborhood, when she knocked on my door holding a welcome basket filled with more printed bylaws than actual gifts. "We're so delighted to have new blood in Green Valley," she said, smiling in that strained way where the corners of her mouth move but her eyes stay flat. "I'm sure you'll love our community once you understand how we operate." That should have been my first warning. Evelyn, with her sleek bob haircut and polished casual wear, was a senior manager at a big-name law firm and had been HOA president for 5 years straight. I'd later learned that no one ran against her, mostly because no one dared. At first, I kept a low profile. I paid my dues, mowed my lawn like clockwork, and skipped the monthly HOA meetings. From what I heard from my neighbor Sarah Johnson, those gatherings were more like Evelyn's personal courtroom than any kind of community forum. Sarah was one of the few genuinely kind people in the neighborhood. She lived 2 doors down, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher who sometimes brought over homemade cookies just to be nice. "Don't let Evelyn get to you," she told me once. "She means well, sometimes. She just really believes her way is the only right one." I probably could have stayed under Evelyn's radar forever if it weren't for my weekend hobby. I grew up in rural Montana. My grandfather taught me to hunt when I was still in grade school. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a tradition, a way to connect with the land, to slow down and reflect. I still loved it. The stillness, the focus, the respect. One weekend in October, I found a large tract of wooded land that bordered the community, around 80 acres of untouched forest, complete with a stream and no signs of recent development. I spent a Saturday scouting it and thought it would be perfect for deer hunting once the season started. Curious about who owned it, I visited the county records office. Turned out, the land belonged to an 83-year-old man named Frank Williams, who had moved to Florida years ago, but still held the title. I tracked down his contact info and emailed him, explaining who I was and asking if I could hunt there responsibly. To my surprise, he responded the next day, "Son, I've owned that land for 50 years. My family used to farm the clearings. I haven't been back in almost a decade since my arthritis got bad. If you want to hunt there, you have my blessing. Just respect the land and send me a photo if you get a good buck." What I didn't know at the time was that Evelyn and several other HOA members had been using Frank's land for years as their own private hiking retreat. They had created informal trails, placed benches in scenic spots, even installed bird feeders, all without the owner's knowledge or permission. They had essentially adopted the land as an extension of their own yards, despite having no legal right to it. That detail would become very important very soon. On a chilly November morning, I set out before dawn with my rifle and gear. I positioned myself in a clearing Frank had mentioned, sat quietly, and waited. Around 9 a.m., I spotted a healthy 8-point buck at the tree line. One clean shot dropped him immediately. As I walked over to field dress the deer, I heard voices. Sure enough, down one of the trails came Evelyn and 5 other women in their designer hiking gear, laughing and sipping from reusable water bottles. The moment Evelyn saw me beside the deer, her expression turned to pure horror. "What in God's name are you doing?" she gasped, immediately reaching for her phone. "This is a protected area. Who gave you permission to murder animals here?" I started to explain that I had permission from the landowner, but she waved me off. "We manage these nature trails," she said. "Hunting is absolutely forbidden. This is against Green Valley's values. It's barbaric." She snapped photos of me and the deer, muttering that she'd report me to the HOA and the authorities. That moment was when I realized this HOA didn't just want to control mailboxes and lawn height. They wanted control over everything. 3 days later, I found an official-looking envelope taped to my door. Inside was a formal notice of violation from the Green Valley Estates Association. Cruel hunting practices on community land, fine $5,000, 0 cents. And that's when I knew it was time to stop playing defense and start fighting back.